Doris Matsui.
Love those yellow shirts.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. My name is Xavier Becerra. I'm a member of Congress from Los Angeles, California. I'm also the chairman of the House Democratic Caucus. I am thrilled to be joined with several of my colleagues, Jan Schakowsky, Lloyd Doggett, Brendan Boyle. We're hoping that Doris Matsui will also join us. We have a couple of guests as well who will speak, Susan Flashman and Max Richtman, and each of them will be introduced in turn. We want to start off today by first thanking everyone who's come, especially those of you wearing those wonderfully bright yellow shirts, which talk about the importance of not just protecting, but preserving and promoting Social Security and Medicare. And so thank you for being here. But secondly, we're here because today, in just a short while, the trustees of the Social Security program are going to announce that they have finished their annual report on the health of the Social Security system. That trustee report has been done every single year of the 80 years of the Social Security program's existence. So that in of itself is not remarkable. 20 years ago, they did a report as well. What's interesting about 20 years ago is that in 1994, Congress, working with the Social Security Administration, had to make some refinements, some fine-tuning to Social Security to make sure that the three pillars of Social Security, the retirement portion for those who retire after having worked and paid into the system, the disability portion for those who worked and paid into the system and then became disabled, and the portion that's set aside for those who are the survivors of American workers who paid into the system but unfortunately perished at some point, and now their survivors receive benefits. Those three portions had to be fine-tuned back in 1994 to make sure that Americans who paid into Social Security could expect to receive the benefits they had worked to earn. That was 1994. I was there at the time. I think I'm the only member present here who was there at the time in 1994. And we voted essentially unanimously in 1994 to make that refinement, a reallocation of funds from one pot to another to make sure that all three of the pillars of Social Security continued forward. The great thing about Social Security in its 80 years, not once has it failed to pay in full and on time to every person who has qualified by working and paying into Social Security. And so today it shouldn't be remarkable to hear the Social Security Trustees report tell us that some 60 million Americans are receiving Social Security benefits, whether retirement, disability payments, or the survivors of an American worker. And it shouldn't be surprising that the trustees report will probably tell us that somewhere over 160 million Americans are working and paying into Social Security today to be able to also receive those earned benefits into the future. But what is remarkable about today is that 2015 is very different from 1994 or any other of the 80 other years we've seen in Congress, because as of this year, we can no longer do the fine-tuning that has been done 11 times by the Social Security Administration to balance the different pots of the three pillars. We can't do that anymore, not because there's been a change and not because money isn't being contributed. It's because of a change of a rule in the House of Representatives so that we can no longer do those reallocations that have been done, as I said, 11 times through 6 separate congressional authorizations to make those fine-tuning adjustments. We can't do that anymore because a rule in the House now prohibits us from doing so. So what we find is that Social Security has been shoved into this political debate. Now politicians, not the money that's in the Social Security system, holds the fate of people who paid into Social Security in its hands. Because if it were left simply to the Social Security system and the money we paid in, there wouldn't be a problem because there are $2.8 trillion in the trust fund of the Social Security system for people like Susan, who will speak briefly. So rather than engage in this politics, rather than engage in the bureaucratic fine-tuning that's had to go on several occasions, why not just make Social Security be what everyone believes it to be and understands it to be? One system providing one wraparound benefit, so whether you perish and you have to leave something for your family members who survive you, whether you become disabled and can no longer work, or whether you reach retirement age, you have your Social Security because you paid for it. And so today we're introducing legislation called the One Social Security Act, which essentially says when we deposit our money into the Social Security system through our taxes that we contribute out of our paycheck, it goes into one Social Security system for one purpose, to pay us the benefits we earned, whether we need it for disability, for retirement, or because we die and our survivors need that money. That bill, H.R. 3150, ensures the protections that we all expect, and it places in harmony what we take for granted, that Social Security will be there because you earned it if you worked in America and you paid into Social Security. And so that's why we're here to talk to you, because we want one Social Security that is not filled with the gamesmanship of politics here in Congress. And with that, let me now yield to Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky from Illinois.
Well, I am just so pleased to be here with my colleagues, with advocates, with Susan. I want to especially thank Chairman Becerra for his leadership in promoting and supporting Social Security every day and for introducing this bill today. So working Americans earn Social Security benefits. I think none of us can really say that enough. This is not some sort of a welfare program. This is a program that people have been paying into, are paying into, and reaping the benefits that they have earned. They contribute one payment every month. And that payment buys them, as the chairman has described, retiree coverage, disability insurance, and life insurance. And those benefits are guaranteed. Social Security has never missed a payment in 80 years. They are inflation adjusted. Most pensions, I know of no others that are so inflation adjusted, and they are a great, a great bargain. Social Security spends about 0.6% for administrative costs. And when most of us think about Social Security and older Americans, we think about retirement. 2/3 of seniors rely on Social Security for a majority of their income, and 1 in 3 for virtually all of their income. Social Security is it for about 1 out of 3. What many don't know is that older Americans, those nearing eligibility for earned retirement benefits, also rely heavily on Social Security disability insurance. The average age of someone on disability insurance is 53. 7 in 10 are over the age of 50, and 3 in 10 are over the age of 60. 1 million are veterans. So the older you get, the more likely that you are to suffer a disability. People at age 50 are twice as likely to become disabled than those who are 40 years old, and disability is twice as likely at age 60 as it was at age 50. Seniors need both retirement and disability benefits. They don't want to choose between them, and there's no reason why they should. The One Social Security Act is just simply common sense. It recognizes the importance of retirement and disability insurance to seniors and to all Americans. It gives Social Security the ability to respond to temporary demographic changes, and it's a necessary response to Republican policies that would sharply cut benefits that are essential but modest, which I would argue is really the goal of what the Republicans are doing right now. You've heard about how Republicans have slipped in procedural barriers that could reduce SSDI, disability insurance benefits, by 20%, or force cuts to retirement and dependent benefits. That's kind of the choice that they've given us. Make no mistake about it, if they succeed here, they will continue their efforts to erode Social Security, which is simply part of the Republican agenda. We've already heard their candidates talk about raising the age of retirement, cutting earned benefits, and privatizing Social Security. 80 years ago this year, Social Security was created in the midst of the Great Depression. Today, when the United States has never been wealthier, richest country in the world, wealthiest point in history, we can't let Social Security's guarantee be eroded. We have to protect and, I would say, expand benefits, not let anyone use a manufactured problem as an excuse to cut earned benefits. We owe it to this generation and to the generations to come. I'm so pleased that Congressman Lloyd Doggett from Texas has joined us, someone who is on the Ways and Means Committee, someone who has continued throughout his career to fight for people of all ages, but right now to come to the defense of Social Security, the defense of all Americans who need those benefits. Thank you, Lloyd.
Jan, thank you, and thank you for your able leadership of our Seniors Task Force, and of course, Xavier, for your leadership on this bill. The $2.8 billion surplus that Social Security has today is the result of the payments that all of us make into Social Security that have built up this surplus. The unprecedented Republican rule that demands a 20% cut in payments to individuals with disability who are covered by Social Security means 11 million disabled Americans get less unless this Congress raises taxes. We know that's not going to happen, or cuts some other portion of the disability program. This rule is heartless and it is needless. Social Security, its full name is Old Age Survivors and Disability Insurance. We make one payment for that Social Security insurance program, as do employers. We make it simultaneously for all of the Social Security program. Only those who suffer a mental or physical impairment which prohibits them from performing substantial gainful activity at any job in our national economy qualify to receive a disability payment. That's who they're talking about cutting. Nobody should be denied full access to all of the social insurance for which they have paid. One Social Security acknowledges that and prevents this drastic cut to individuals with disabilities. Last week's Ways and Means Committee hearing about Social Security disability was just the same old Republican stump speech that if poor people will work harder and bureaucrats will get out of the way, we won't have any problems. Well, that will not prevent this drastic cut to individuals with disabilities. The legislation that we join Xavier Becerra in offering today, the One Social Security Act, will. Thank you.
Let me ask Susan Flashman to now speak to us. Susan was a gainfully employed American electrician, and then she suffered what oftentimes happens to a lot of us, something very unexpected. And I'll let her tell her story, but we are pleased that Ms. Susan Flashman has taken the time to be with us, because she is an example of an American who worked very hard, paid into the system, probably expected at some point use Social Security in retirement, but is here to tell us about why Social Security has become so important to her at the age of 60, I believe. 61. Susan.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Flashman, and I'm a retired electrician. I am here today on behalf of the Alliance for Retired Americans. I am 61 years old, and my husband and I live in Mount Rainier, Maryland. I worked for more than 25 years, but then I needed brain surgery due to a cyst that turned into a tumor. It took about a year of rehab for me to be functional again. However, my balance was permanently affected at that point, and I was unable to work. This happened when I was 57 years old, and has been I'd been planning to work for much longer. I'm still unable to work today. Believe me, I wanted to keep working, but the brain tumor prevented it. Though through no fault of my own, I was up a creek and extremely scared. The financial effects compounded the worries that I had about my health. The hospital bills alone were more than $100,000. And on top of that, I lost earnings for the time I was out. Fortunately, I had earned Social Security benefits during my career. I went through a difficult process these disability benefits take a long time to obtain. My brother was kind enough to help me through all these steps. Most people don't have a brother like that. There is an involved process to ensure that the disability benefits are given only to people who really need them. However, when you are disabled, you are even more challenged by the process. I had surgery in 2011, and it was not until I had been disabled for a year that my doctors could consider me permanently disabled. So that was in 2013. And consequently, I was considered for Social Security disability. The Social Security Administration had me see a doctor that they referred me to as well as my own. It became clear to everyone that I had plateaued in my rehabilitation and that my balance would unfortunately prevent me from working again. The only upside is that I met the criteria for Social Security disability benefits. Because I can't work, those benefits have been a financial lifeline for me. I earned those benefits by working nearly all my life, so in no way do I feel like I am getting a handout. I feel badly for others who have also earned disability benefits and are portrayed as somehow undeserving. That is very hurtful to the disabled community. My husband receives Social Security benefits as a retiree. If I were not married and supporting myself without him, I might still not be here to tell you about this. My story is nothing different than so many Americans. Thank you all very much for your time and consideration, and I hope that this bill passes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me now ask our colleague from Pennsylvania, Brendan Boyle, to come forward.
Well, thank you, and thank you particularly for sharing your story and for your leadership in this, Xavier. I know that when people look at me, they don't exactly imagine that one of the top things in my mind would be Social Security, as I might be a few years from that. But that is actually a bit of a misnomer, what we're talking about today and with SSDI. Let me tell you a story not so much about myself, but about my dad. Came to America as an immigrant when he was 19, worked hard as a laborer and in factories, one of those guys that would never miss a day of work. And then suddenly in the summer of 1988, my mom got a sudden horrifying call that there had been an accident at work, the Acme warehouse where my dad had worked. He had been sucked into a conveyor belt, crushing one leg beneath the knee, and it was quite serious. So much so that the first doctor wanted to amputate below the knee. So suddenly my dad, a hardworking, healthy guy who at that point had never had any health issues, was facing an uncertain future. And what's interesting is as I tell this story, it occurs to me he was 38 at the time, the same exact age that I am today. Now, fortunately, the story has a happy ending. After 6 or 7 months of incredibly painful rehab, my father was able to recover to the point that he went back to work about 7 months after the accident and would go on to work that company and still works today as a janitor for SEPTA, Philadelphia's transit system, up until this upcoming spring, about 9 months from now when he will finally retire. So that story has a happy ending. But imagine if, because it very easily could have gone differently, that he was amputated or that he wasn't able to recover through no fault of his own. He at 38 would have been disabled, and there's no question would have needed SSDI, not just him for himself, but his wife, my mom, and the 2 children they were raising. So this program is incredibly important. The entire Social Security program is vital to this nation. You know, you wouldn't think that a program that has an 80-year record of perfection, of always making payments on time every single month, you wouldn't think that that would be in jeopardy. And yet it constantly is. Not only the proposed cut because of the Republican rule to SSDI, but also the constant efforts to reform the system, which always end up resulting in a benefit cut or partial, if not full, privatization. So it is important that those of us that believe in Social Security, the 80-year track record it's had, the 50-year track record that Medicare has had, it's important that we stand up and that we speak out in favor of it and also talk about its successes, because if we do rest for a moment, it might not be there for my generation and for future generations. One final point I would make is that while I, as fortunate to be a member of Congress now and in my late 30s, I'm not thinking of Social Security for myself, that is the challenge that is particularly acute for those who need the SSDI, because on average, those who need it and are on the program more than 20 years. So while it doesn't affect every retiree the way Social Security does, for those who do need it and are found in that unfortunate, even Siri agrees with what I'm saying, by the way, I want to point out. For those who find themselves in that unfortunate situation, that is the lifeline for decades. It is absolutely vital. It is an integral part of the Social Security program, and we must preserve it. Now with that, I want to introduce from a great organization, and I'm so glad so many folks with the bright yellow t-shirts are here, from the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, Max Richtman.
Thank you very much, Congressman. On behalf of our organization, the Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, I'm really proud to be here to endorse the One Social Security Act. Congressman Becerra, you and your colleagues are introducing this bill because you understand that Social Security is one program, as everybody has talked about, that has lifted millions of seniors, workers with disabilities, as you talked about, out of poverty. This is not just a federal program. I think it's a value. It's an American value, and that's what all of you understand. You know, Congressman, I'll tell a little story too. Earlier this week, I was in the Midwest, and I was meeting with a man who really follows politics and follows Social Security issues, social insurance issues. And I tried to talk to him about what was happening to Social Security and Medicare, and he said he hadn't heard of any attacks on Social Security. He said no one's talking about privatizing Social Security the way President Bush was. And that's true. And that's what worries us. When former President Bush, I'll never forget this, came out the day after he was reelected, came up to the podium. We were in our conference room. He said he had earned political capital and he was going to use it to privatize Social Security. Well, we nearly fell out of our chairs. We knew we had a big battle. And as awful as that plan was, we at least knew what the deal was. The battle lines were clear. The battle lines were drawn. And the public, despite all those town hall meetings all over the country, the public and the Congress understood the stakes that were involved, and privatization was rejected, soundly rejected. Now the attacks on Social Security and Medicare, I think, are much more insidious. They're in a lot of ways more dangerous because, like this man, they don't hear about it. They don't think there's a problem out around the country. And for example, we've seen, and I know most of you, I was with you when we saw attempts to cut Medicare, use that money to retrain workers that lost their jobs as part of the trade bill. Right now, right today, we're seeing in the Senate an effort to cut Social Security benefits for some beneficiaries in order to help pay for the highway bill. This is happening over and over again. But what happened on that first day, I think that first hour of this new Congress here in the House, I think is probably the most cynical attack that I've seen on Social Security in a long time. And that's when this rule that you've all talked about was passed that would in effect, no, they're not going to raise taxes, they're going to cut benefits. So unless there's a reform of Social Security, which is really code for cutting benefits, the Social Security disability program will be cut by about 20%. And why it's so cynical is This is an effort to pit retirees against disabled workers. And, you know, I was thinking about how to describe that, and the words that would properly describe that, you know, aren't fit to print or say in polite company like this. But our members and most Social Security beneficiaries understand this is an intergenerational compact. It protects all members of the family, and they believe this is one Social Security system where all the parts, whether disability, retirement, or survivor benefits, are equally important. So without any action, like the bill you've introduced, Social Security benefits will be cut for 11 million people by 20%. We at the National Committee and Congressman Becerra and supporters that are here of the bill are committed to preventing that 20% cut and prevent financing the Social Security disability program from being held hostage, because that's what this is all about, being held hostage to retiree and survivor benefit cuts. So thank you all for helping us, instead of divide the country, producing a bill that will bring us all together under Social Security, under a single Social Security trust fund. And I was so glad to hear you and others talk about this is an earned benefit. And a lot of times we lose track of this. It is something you paid for. And it's federal. You know, we know the term FICA. FICA is Federal Insurance Contribution Act, and it funds old age, survivor, and disability programs. This is insurance for families, and we shouldn't be denying people in any way benefits that they paid for, that they earned. So I thank you all. Thank Congressman Becerra and others for co-sponsoring the bill. And I've been with many of you many, many times, and you're always there. You're always there working to protect Social Security, Medicare, and survivors, disabled, and retirees. We will do everything we can, along with the Alliance, I know is committed to this, to make sure that this bill is enacted into law. Thank you very much.
We probably have time for a couple of questions. I think we may have some. So see if we have any questions from any of the folks in the audience. The reporters might have questions, and if not, then we want to say thank you to everyone who's come, and we look forward to working with all of you. My colleagues and I were all thrilled that we have this opportunity to introduce this legislation, and we'll do everything we can, working with Susan, with Max, and everybody who believes in Social Security to make sure that we don't make cuts, we make improvements to the Social Security system, and as Jan Schakowsky said, we actually make it work even better for more Americans into the future. With that, thank you all very much.
Thank you.